Hey everybody, thanks for watching. Hit the bell, subscribe. We have new content coming out daily. Make sure you subscribe. God bless you guys. Shall we shoot looters? After a Philly police officer had charges dismissed for the fatal shooting of Eddie Irizarry.
Irizarry, I think.
Yeah, it would have took me 5 tries.
Irizarry.
I would have done 5 tries and got it wrong every time. Philadelphia exploded in America's worst spasm of looting and rioting since Floydapalooza, all caught on camera. More than 50 people were arrested, prompting a debate within the Charlie Kirk team. What's the best response to looting? Do we arrest them and hope left-wing prosecutors do their job, or is it okay to shoot looters? Let me be very clear. I think that if you own the store, it's okay to shoot the looter. But the police officers should not shoot looters. Blake, do you disagree?
I mean, I think it's worth zooming out a bit. We used to have an idea like the fleeing felon rule. Like a felon who is fleeing from the police, they can use force to detain him, and it can include shooting them because, felons are dangerous. Obviously, they can be dangerous to the public because they can be violent people on the run and all of that. But I think it is worth considering this just because we have to remember what looting really is. It is the breakdown of civilization. It is the assault on civilization. And when you let it happen, it flourishes. And we've seen the ramifications for that, which is when you let civilization break down, a ton of people die. A decade ago, Washington, D.C. had 88 murders. It's already passed 200 this year. It could hit 250 by the end of the year. So that's literally more than 100 people who are dead, essentially because we allowed law and order to break down in D.C. We allowed the norm of following the law to go away, and instead people feel like they can rob stores with impunity.
And I think if you own a store, no doubt. But are you saying, just so I'm clear, police officer sees a group, just start opening fire?
I think you could say you could order them to stop, and then if they don't,
or try to arrest them,
or try to arrest them, and if they keep coming, I think it would actually be if the thing is I think people dislike it because they have the idea this means you shoot 1,000 people, but you don't. You really have to shoot basically 1 or 2.
So this actually is something that Mayor Daley Sr. Senior did. There were Chicago race riots, right? And I'm not supporting nor am I, rejecting this. It's a fact. And growing up in Chicago, it was well known. He said, "Look, you shoot a couple of them, they all go home." Jack, where do you come on this?
Yeah, I mean, I would say there's also a middle ground. This is a great example. This is a great example of a place where we can employ pepper balls, which are essentially it's sort of a cross between a paintball gun and pepper spray, where you shoot these things into the crowd. They're non-lethal. And they will cause the looting to stop immediately. They will force this crowd to disperse, and it's able to be done at a projectile distance, so you don't have to have the officer get into a situation where they themselves might become the target of a mob like this. And that's one of the dangers where I'm in agreement with Blake, because we have to understand that every shoplifting, they say, oh, it's a victimless crime. It's a victimless crime, right? Well, what if you try to intervene? What if you try to stop them? What if you try to do something about it? Now, all of a sudden, that entire crowd turns on you. Now it is an attempted murder, and we saw this with the 7-Eleven situation. Now it is a situation where they might want to actually turn on you. This crowd, that many people, that could beat you to death if there's only 2 or 3 cops involved. So, yeah, I think there should be something involved, and I think the pepper balls, and there's various other implements like this as well, grenades, there's sonic devices, sound emitters, etc., that can be employed. But then, at the point where I would say, fire hose. But if you want to come in and say, then if you're threatening the police, like this guy, Eddie Irizarry, when he pulled a weapon on the police after they had pulled him over, at that point, yeah, go ahead.
It's just, I think it's actually beneficial to society for there to be the understanding that if you are committing a violent crime, and I would say looting is a violent crime, this carries the risk of death with it. And that is a good check on people who will destroy civilization. And that's all we have. It is a very thin line between civilization and barbarism, as we saw in 2020.
Where are you on the Singapore question? So Lee Kuan Yew had this issue in Singapore back in the 60s when he started, really revamping the little island down there. Now Singapore has done really well for itself. It's one of they call the Asian tigers, and it's all thanks to 2 things: prison and public flogging.
Ooh, public flogging is a fun one, and it's not an option in America because we've just decided it's icky. I think you could easily mainstream it by just making it an option. If you commit your first offense or a lower level offense, you can do 6 months in jail or you can get flogged publicly. I think a lot of people would probably rather just
one flog for each month you would have had.
It's something like that, yeah.
6
And
flogs.
it's embarrassing. It sends a good message to the public, and it's a lot cheaper to do.
Does it work?
Singapore has a much
So
lower crime rate than America.
So you remember Michael Fay, the American, back in the 90s, who was arrested in Singapore and then was sentenced to public flogging? You guys remember the story?
I don't remember it because I think I was mostly concerned with like playing Mario Kart in the 1990s. But I've heard the story.
It was a huge story. So if you actually go and look, Michael Fay is now an upstanding member of society. We actually, on the show when we were covering all this a couple of months ago, we looked it up, and like I think Salon was coming after us, or Slate, or one of those. They're all kind of the same. I think it was Jezebel, actually. Now I think about it. That we were saying, look, Michael Fay has gone on to. He's like a small business owner now. He's like in the Midwest. He's got like a couple of businesses that he runs, and he's doing really well for himself, and totally turned his life around, and all thanks to flogging.
Just to be clear, I believe he vandalized a car in Singapore is what he did, and then...
No, it was like a ton of cars, including like cars at like the governor of Singapore's house. Like, it was really bad what he did.
So Blake, the counter argument from weak Republican criminal justice advocates would be, but it could be a potential death penalty for a young person that might be caught up in a moment of passion, of like I mean, I get it.
Yes.
You're like, okay, so that's the position. So a teenager goes and steals a bunch of Nikes, potentially could get a bullet.
Look what we have now. We have teenagers who are carjacking Ubers, who are joyriding in Kias and Hyundais, who are mugging people, who are committing these severe assaults. This is happening because we have unleashed chaos.
Is stealing, and I'm not disagreeing, is stealing Nikes or Apple computers morally equivalent to like assaulting a human being?
It is not, but I think it is easy to understate it. It is like you could do anything with your life, and you decided to just go smash into a store, steal a bunch of things that aren't yours, endanger the public, and like these things routinely get violent in the act. Like these routinely lead to murders and such, as we saw in the aftermath of this, and say like, no, this is entirely unacceptable behavior.
So
like, why? Like, it's like saying if someone just breaks into your home, can you not use force on those people if they're only trying to steal things? Like, is it really worth ending a teenager's life if they just want to steal your jewelry?
Oh, I'm perfectly on the page of that. But Blake, is the part of your argument that also it would create deterrence? This would make looting almost non-existent.
The thing about it is that if we shot looters, in 6 months, we wouldn't be shooting looters anymore, and we wouldn't have looters. Whereas right now, we have looters, and we still have all these shootings because looting causes all other crimes to become easier and more common.
So